Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back through the desert haze, past drifting dunes and quiet camel bells, to a time when gold glittered in the sand and empires stretched beyond the horizon. You're about to walk barefoot across sun-warmed stone streets, trace rivers that shimmer like molten metal, and sit beside kings who make billionaires look frugal. This is the story of Mansa Musa, the man who gave away so much gold. Entire economies broke under the weight of his generosity. He ruled Mali at the peak of its power, but you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in his sandals. Between blazing heat, scheming courtiers, and the pressure of managing a trade network that stretched from the Sahara to the Mediterranean, this is no beach vacation. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time is right now. I love seeing bedtime around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of the Niger River, your toes pressing into the soft, dark mud. A wide, lazy current glides past, reflecting a pale pink sky. The air smells like wet earth, fried millet, and distant smoke. You hear drumming in the distance, faint but rhythmic, like a heartbeat echoing through the grasslands. This is Mali, but not the one on modern maps. This is 1312 Mali, where the empire is wide and rich and rising. You're not yet Mansa Musa. Right now, you're just another face in the bustling heart of West Africa, a land where gold seems to leak from the earth, and griots, those ancient oral historians, carry stories thicker than scrolls. You glance north, where the Sahara looms like a sleeping beast, and south, where the forests whisper secrets. Trade routes stitch this world together like threads in a royal robe. Mali isn't just a kingdom. It's a marketplace of civilizations. Salt caravans from Tagaza, cloth from Egypt, books from Andalusia, and of course gold. Always gold. Not the kind hidden in dragon hoards, but nuggets panned from riverbeds, traded for spices and scholars, pressed into intricate jewelry for queens and scribes alike. You're not alone here. Children chase goats between the market stalls, their laughter rising like birdsong. Women in bright indigo cloths trade bundles of grain and gossip. Elders lean on carved canes, whispering about the old king, Abu Bakr II, who sailed into the Atlantic one day and never returned. They say he left in search of the edge of the world. Others say he sank before he ever got there. Historians still argue whether he truly meant to disappear or if he simply got lost in a current too strong. In his absence, the empire waits. And you, well, you're waiting too. You hear stories that the royal court sits in Niani, where mango trees shade whitewashed walls and officials scribble Arabic calligraphy in the shade. You're drawn there, slowly, as if Mali itself is tugging at your robes. You cross bridges woven from vines, stop to rest beneath baobab trees, and eat sweet dates with merchants who've seen the sands of Cairo and the markets of Marrakesh. And every night, under a sky smeared with stars, you hear the griots whisper, a new ruler is coming, a man whose name will echo farther than any before him. You chuckle quietly. You're not convinced. Mali's had kings before, some wise, some cruel, all powerful, but none have claimed the entire river. Not yet. One evening, you pass through a village where everyone is gathered around a blind storyteller. His voice is soft, like wind over clay pots. He tells the tale of the golden bird, how it flew from the cliffs of Bandiagra and dropped a nugget into the lap of a sleeping child. That child, the griot says, grew up to lead an army that never lost a battle. You lie back in the grass and let the sound wash over you. Next morning, when you wake, you swear you see something glittering in the river mud. Just a flash. Just enough to make you wonder if the old man was speaking in riddles. Later, as you travel toward Niani, you pass the ruins of Ghana. No, not modern Ghana, but the ancient empire whose name now lingers like dust on a forgotten scroll. It once ruled this land, before Mali swallowed it whole. Its roads are crumbling, but its echoes remain. You feel them in the wind, in the way the ground holds heat, in the eyes of traders who remember better days. A donkey cart creaks past, its driver muttering about taxes. You raise a brow. Mali taxes salt? Yes, and gold, and fish, and jokes if you tell them too loudly at the wrong time. You grin. This empire is no joke. By the time you reach Niani, the city hums like a beehive. You pass markets stacked with cola nuts, artisans melting gold into bracelets, scholars reciting verses under shady arches. You stop beside a well and drink deeply. The water is cool, sharp with minerals. Someone nearby says the king is dying. Someone else says he already has. The truth? Well, that's a little murky. Like the river after a rain. What's clear is this. Something's about to change. And whether you believe the griots or not, you're standing on the edge of something big. Something golden. You don't become the richest man in history by accident. You also don't just wake up one morning as Mansa Musa, ruler of the Mali Empire, with gold dust in your beard and a scepter heavier than your conscience. No, this takes timing, and maybe a bit of fate. You're now Musa. Not yet. Mansa Musa. That title still hovers just out of reach, like a ripe mango you're not tall enough to grab. You're royal, yes, but not the royal. You were likely a deputy, a trusted advisor, maybe even a brother or cousin to King Abu Bakr II, that sea-dreaming sovereign who, against all advice, built a fleet and chased the edge of the world westward across the Atlantic. What was he thinking? Historians still argue whether he was seeking new lands or just trying to prove a point. Some say he disappeared into storms. Others believe he found something so mesmerizing he never came back. You'll never know. What matters is he left you in charge. Temporarily, at first. You remember the day. The city was hot, too hot. A kind of heat that seeps into your bones and refuses to leave. The courtiers fanned themselves with dried reeds. The griots looked uneasy. You were handed the reins. Just until he returns, they said. But weeks passed. Then months. Then whispers. Eventually, the crown was yours. You try not to smile too widely when it happens. But inside, your heart is pounding like festival drums. You're Mansa Musa now. Absolute monarch of Mali. Guardian of Timbuktu. Keeper of the river. And, oh yes, owner of more gold than your scribes can count. In fact, counting it becomes kind of a joke. You commission a team of counters, and they give up halfway through. One guy tries to count using tiny cowrie shells. He gives up at 80,000. So you guess a lot. That's good enough for now. Gold flows through Mali like lifeblood. It's mined in bambuk and beret, carted by slaves and donkeys, traded for salt and silk and scholars. And yet, you're not greedy. You're generous. Sometimes too generous. But we'll get to that. For now, you walk the palace grounds in Niani. Your robes are so fine, they rustle like leaves when you move. People bow when they see you, some dropping all the way to the ground. You build mosques with polished stone and towers that glitter in the sun. You commission scribes to record your decrees, and slowly, very slowly, you start shaping Mali into something even bigger than an empire. A legacy. But the palace isn't all gold and incense. There are debates. Your advisors argue over how much salt should be taxed. One wants to double it. Another says to abolish it altogether. You lean back, listen, and sip cool water. Sometimes you rule with silence. Other times, you strike like a cobra. You're devout, too. A Muslim, serious about your faith. You pray 5 times a day. You keep scholars close, build schools next to your mosques, and seek out wisdom wherever it hides. You listen to griots and imams, because sometimes a story can reveal truth just as well as a scripture. And yet, despite your piety, you feel a growing itch. A call. A need to leave your mark on the world. Not just through gold or law, but through a journey. A holy one. The Hajj. You think about it for months. Years, maybe. And finally, you decide you'll go to Mecca. Not quietly, though. No slipping through the side door of the empire. No humble camel and dusty robe. No, no, no. You're going to make the biggest, brightest, boldest pilgrimage the world has ever seen. You're going to take Mali with you. But first, logistics. You call your court. They gather like a murmuring tide. You tell them, prepare for a journey. A long one. Across deserts and rivers, past cities and kingdoms, all the way to the heart of Islam. Someone coughs. Someone faints. A scribe drops his inkwell. You begin the preparations. You commission tailors to stitch fine garments. gold thread glinting like sunlight in fabric. You order the palace kitchens to dry enough meat to last 1,000 men across 1,000 miles. You gather camels, hundreds of them, maybe more. Some say you took 60,000 people with you. Others say it was fewer. Historians still argue about the numbers. One thing is clear. No one had ever done this before. You select guards, guides, griots. You gather slaves, goldsmiths, scholars, even jesters, because a journey this long needs laughter. And most importantly, you gather gold. Loads of it. On camelback, in sacks, in ornaments and ingots. Enough to build a palace out of sunshine. And still, you want more. You call for the miners in the south. Bring it all. You say, we're taking it to Mecca. And they do. The desert wind picks up, swirling around your palace like a whisper. You feel it tugging at your robes, calling you eastward, toward Cairo, toward Arabia, toward the sacred city where prophets once walked. The journey is almost ready. But first you kneel, in private, in the shadowed chamber of your mosque. You press your forehead to the cool floor. You ask for guidance, for safety, for strength, and maybe, just a little, for the world to notice. Because let's be honest, you're not just going on Hajj. You're making an entrance. And what an entrance it will be. You take your first step just before dawn. The sun hasn't cracked the horizon yet, but your caravan is already moving, a snaking line of people, animals, and gold glinting in the torchlight. The air is heavy with dust and cinnamon, because apparently someone thought it was a good idea to pack spices next to the incense. You don't mind. It smells like ambition. And there you are, on a tall horse, draped in robes so radiant they could blind a mosquito from 50 feet. Your turban is thick with silk, embroidered with verses from the Quran in gold thread. Your saddle is lined with red velvet. You are not just a king. You are a comet with legs. The procession stretches far behind you. Tens of thousands of people, hundreds of camels. Some say 60 camels carried just the gold, and not just a few nuggets here and there. We're talking hundreds of pounds of pure gold dust, slabs, and ornaments. Even the walking sticks are gold-plated. Because why not? You head east, across the Sahel. It's hot. The kind of hot that makes leather melt, and people rethink their life choices. But still, you move forward. Past villages, past rivers, past whispering oases where palm trees bend like they're bowing to your presence. Everywhere you go, people stare. Children chase the caravan barefoot. Traders stop mid-deal, jaws wide open. One griot writes that birds flew lower just to get a better look. Okay, maybe he exaggerated, but only a little. You reach the city of Gao. It's the last big stop before the true desert begins. Here, the Niger River loops lazily like a snake that's eaten too much. You rest. You pray. You hand out gold, casually, like it's candy at a parade. A beggar asks for help. You give him enough to build a business. A merchant complains about his sick donkey. You buy him 2 camels. Your advisors side-eye each other. Is he going to give it all away? Yes. Yes, you are. Next, the Sahara. You can smell it before you see it. Dry wind. No shade. Sand dunes that go on forever. Your guides, Tuareg nomads, know the way. They mark routes by stars, mirages, and the bones of old travelers. You trust them completely, mostly because they don't talk much, and anyone who stares down a desert without blinking probably knows what they're doing. You enter the sands. Days blur. You travel at dawn and dusk, resting during the worst heat. The camels walk slow but steady. Their feet puff into the sand like giant, squishy spoons. The people complain, quietly. Water becomes more valuable than gold. And for the first time, your bling feels heavy, but you keep going. Your imams recite Quranic verses as you travel. The sound floats over the dunes like a lullaby. At night, you lie under the stars. The sky is so vast it almost swallows you. You think about Mecca, about legacy, about how small your caravan is compared to the universe. Then you remember your slippers are gold-threaded, and you feel better. One night, a sandstorm hits. You barely make it into a cluster of tents before the wind screams across the dunes, tearing at ropes and snapping tent poles like twigs. People panic. Camels break free. For hours, you sit in darkness, breathing dust and doubt. And yet, you survive. In the morning, you help repack. You laugh with the soldiers. You pat a camel on the head. It immediately tries to bite you, but still, it's a moment. Eventually, you reach the Nile, the green, the water. People weep openly. You bathe in it like it's your private tub. And ahead of you, Cairo, one of the greatest cities on earth. Now, Cairo is not just a city. It's a heartbeat, a chaos of markets, minarets, perfumes, prayers, politics, and pigeons. And word is already spread. The king of Mali is coming, and he's rich enough to sink a boat just by stepping on it. You enter like a rolling thundercloud of wealth. The streets are lined. People climb rooftops to see you. Children yell. Merchants cry. The Sultan's own advisors nearly faint. You meet with Cairo's governor, and, awkward moment, you refuse to bow. Because while you respect him, you only kneel before God. He's offended. You shrug. He gets over it. Mostly because you hand him so much gold. He could use it as confetti. In a few weeks, you will completely wreck Cairo's economy. You don't mean to. Honestly. It's just that every time someone asks for money, you give it. You hand out gifts like you're possessed. You build mosques, fund schools, tip musicians with nuggets the size of walnuts. Gold floods the markets. Prices crash. Inflation spikes. A loaf of bread suddenly costs triple. Local traders are furious. Centuries later, historians will still track this. European economists will write about how a West African king destabilized an entire region by being too generous. Oops. But you're not done. Not even close. Because Mecca still waits. And you haven't even started to pray. So you set off again. Past the Red Sea. Across Arabian sands. Toward the sacred heart of Islam. The journey has already changed you. And it's only halfway done. You're almost there. The heat shifts subtly as you move from Cairo toward the Arabian Peninsula. It's drier here. Less dusty. Somehow more serious. You feel it in your bones. The nearness of Mecca. The center of the world for Muslims. And you? You're about to make one unforgettable entrance. The Red Sea glimmers to your right like a sheet of hammered silver. You cross into the Hijaz region, and things get holier. Every village echoes with a call to prayer. Dates are sweet and sticky. Even the donkeys walk with reverence. Or maybe they're just tired. You take this stretch slowly. Your advisors urge caution. After all, you'd have just turned Cairo's economy into mashed plantain with a splash of inflation. But you're calm, focused. You're not a tourist anymore. You're a pilgrim now. And finally, Mecca. The moment is surreal. You spot the Kaaba from a distance, draped in black cloth, ringed by pilgrims in white. It's smaller than you imagined, but somehow infinite. You dismount. You remove your royal robes. You slip into the simple white garments of a Haji. No gold, no jewels, just linen and soul. You walk barefoot around the Kaaba 7 times. Your eyes sting, not from sand this time, but from something older. A quiet surrender. Around you, thousands move in silence and prayer. It's not about who has more camels or shinier sandals. Here, everyone is equal. Everyone is dust. Everyone is divine. You drink from the Zamzam well. The water tastes like cool peace. You stand on Mount Arafat, hands raised, whispering thanks and secrets to the sky. You throw stones at symbolic devils in Mina, imagining every fear and flaw shattered with each toss. Historians still argue whether your Hajj was more religious or political. Did you come to seek God or status? Did you kneel in prayer, or pose in gold-threaded humility for future chroniclers? The truth is, probably both. Because after Mecca, your legend explodes. Your name spreads across the Islamic world like wildfire on a dry date palm. Merchants whisper of a king from the gold lands, so wealthy he breaks economies by accident. Scholars talk about your devotion, your donations, your lavish sense of holy style. In Damascus, poets sing about your generosity. In Baghdad, cartographers sketch new maps, just to include Mali and a note. Very rich king lives here. Even in Europe, yes, far away in castles where no one can pronounce Timbuktu, your name drifts in through trade winds. In 1375, Spanish mapmakers will draw you on the Catalan Atlas, sitting on a golden throne, a nugget in hand, smug as ever. Meanwhile, you're still on the move. You make friends. A lot of them. Scholars, architects, mystics, traders. You absorb stories, sciences, languages. Arabic becomes as familiar as your native Mandinka. You write letters in calligraphy so delicate, pigeons feel ashamed of their wings. You invite scholars back with you, men of learning who will reshape Mali's cities. You commission scribes, judges, architects, because you're not just bringing home souvenirs, you're bringing an upgrade package for your entire empire. Then the journey home begins. It's quieter now. The gold bags are a little lighter. So are your steps. But your heart, oh, that thing weighs a ton. With dreams, with blueprints, with prayers, with the knowledge that when you return, everything changes. Not just for you, but for all of Mali. The return trip feels different. You retrace your steps across the blistered spine of the desert. But the air tastes older now, wiser, like it's watched you grow. You're still surrounded by camels, advisors, and those lingering gold nuggets at the bottom of your satchels. But the grandeur has taken a back seat to something calmer, purposeful. You're not rushing anymore. Every town you pass is a potential friendship. Every scholar you meet is a possible future for Mali. You talk less and listen more. And as you cross from Arabia back through Egypt, there's one small problem. Egypt is still recovering from the time you casually broke its economy like a clay jug dropped from a minaret. Gold prices haven't stabilized yet. Egyptian markets are still wobbly. Bread costs more than it should. Shopkeepers glare suspiciously as you pass. You hear whispers like drifting smoke. The gold man returns. Oops, but you're not heartless. You try to fix it. You buy back some of that gold you gave away, trying to suck it out of circulation. It's a weird reversal, like trying to unspill a jug of honey. Historians still debate whether this effort helped or hurt more. Some say it stabilized things. Others claim it made inflation even worse. Either way, the attempt earns you a strange new title in Cairo. The king who gave away too much gold. Not a bad way to be remembered, honestly. From there, your caravan slides westward, across the Libyan sands, past the old oases, through the chaotic laughter of desert markets, and the lullaby hum of wind over dunes. Your party has shrunk a bit. Some scholars have gone ahead to Timbuktu, some friends stay behind. But your spirit has expanded. You arrive at Mali's edge like a breath held for too long. The Sahel welcomes you with its dry grasses and swaying acacia trees. You pass village after village, people lining the roads to glimpse you, not just as a king now, but a kind of myth. You become a story, a moving monument. And then, finally, you reach the capital, Niamey. You expect a welcome. You don't expect this. The streets are packed. Drums pound like thunder. Women ululate. Children throw palm leaves. Old men wipe tears with calloused hands. Your mother, still regal despite the years, kisses your forehead and mutters something only the griots will remember. You're home, but you didn't come back to rest. Within days, the palace becomes a hive of noise and blueprints. You summon builders, architects, masons. You roll out sketches and dreams. The scholars you brought with you are assigned homes, tasks, missions. You start constructing mosques, not just in Niamey, but across the empire. And not just any mosques. These are beauties, intricate, vast, spiritual GPS markers stretching from Jen to Gao. You turn Timbuktu into a beacon. Libraries sprout. Learning becomes the new gold. And you go full Renaissance. You hold court every day. You commission schools, judge disputes, organize trade routes. You pay your soldiers well. You feed the poor. You standardize weights and measures, streamline taxation, and promote Islamic law while respecting local traditions. You are, in short, on fire, and not in a someone light the castle way, but in a watch a civilization bloom kind of way. The Hajj has changed you. It has refined your ambition. Now it's not just about gold or glory. It's about legacy. You've seen the cities of Egypt, the schools of Arabia, the majesty of Mecca, and you want Mali to stand among them. Not as an exotic footnote, but as a capital of culture. And slowly it starts to happen. Caravans arrive from Morocco, Algeria, the Middle East, even Italy. They bring silks, books, glassware, spices. And they leave with gold, salt, stories, and awe. Mali begins to shimmer. And at the center of it all, still wearing that gentle smirk of someone who knows how heavy gold really is, you. It's easy to imagine you sitting there, on a wide stone veranda in Niamey. your robes shimmering in the late afternoon sun, sipping something spiced and sweet while scribes read aloud letters from across the known world. You nod, amused, when one merchant from Venice requests permission to trade authentic blue glass beads for your empire's salt and ivory. You chuckle at another letter, an awkward poem from a scholar in Fez praising your shining intellect and hoping for a library job. The world is watching you now, not just as the man who gave away rivers of gold, but as the ruler of a kingdom people didn't even know existed until recently. Mali, once a distant murmur in the trade winds, is now a name passed between empires, sultans, and sailors. You're not just a king, you're an event. But ruling isn't all incense and ink. Your empire stretches wider than most European kingdoms, from the lush forests of the south to the salt mines of Tagaza in the north. Mali is a patchwork of languages, loyalties, and landscapes. Every river crossing hides a local chieftain who may or may not agree with you. Every village elder sees the world through their own gods, not always Allah. So, you do what any wise ruler would do. You adapt. You allow local customs to continue. You don't demand Arabic in every court or bulldoze indigenous beliefs. Instead, you blend. You encourage Islamic schools while respecting animist festivals. You build mosques next to marketplaces. You appoint local leaders as your governors, often from the families already in power, but now loyal to you. It's a balancing act, but you walk it well. Historians still debate just how centralized your rule was. Some argue Mali under you was a tightly knit state with clear tax systems and law codes. Others claim it was more of a loose federation, powerful in Niani, but murky in the outer provinces. Truth likely lives somewhere in between, in the gray sands between power and perception. What's clearer is your reputation. You become a symbol, not just in Africa, but beyond. Arab historians begin writing about you. Al-Amari, who never even met you, pins glowing descriptions based on second-hand reports. Your wealth, your fairness, your architectural passion. European cartographers, who barely understand what Africa looks like, start drawing you on their maps. One famous 14th century Catalan atlas even shows you seated on a golden throne, crown on head, scepter in hand, holding a nugget the size of a coconut. And let's be real, you probably posed for that one in your imagination. But despite all this, you never seem to forget where you came from. You remember the days before the throne, the stories your mother told by firelight, the chants of griots echoing through childhood nights. So you commission epic poems and oral histories to preserve Mali's memory. You reward storytellers. You turn heritage into a profession. You don't just build a golden age, you document it. And somewhere in the soft, candlelit corners of your palace, there's a young scholar copying verses by hand. She's got ink on her fingertips, gold dust in her curls, and a map of the stars drawn in the margin of her scroll. She doesn't know it yet, but she's part of your plan. Because your real gift wasn't just gold. It was time, space, permission to dream. You took a corner of West Africa and turned it into a canvas for culture, learning, and imagination. And while you're alive, Mali thrives. But the sun is beginning to shift. The weight of years is settling into your joints. You walk a little slower, sit a little longer, watch the horizon more often than the throne room. Still, you've got plans left to finish. In one city, one dusty, legendary, rumor-soaked city needs your final touch. You arrive as the desert exhales, a low wind lifting ochre dust in sleepy spirals. Before you lies Timbuktu. Not the wild myth whispered in caravan songs, not the golden utopia Europeans will one day dream of, but a real, breathing town nestled where the Sahara sighs into the Niger River's curve. It's humbler than Niani, rougher around the edges, and yet, there's something in the air, a hum, a tension in the stones, like this place is waiting to become more than it is. And you, naturally, decide to give it the push it needs. See, Timbuktu is already a trade stop, a meeting place for Berber merchants from the north and Mande traders from the south. It's got salt, ivory, cola nuts, copper, and cloth moving through its narrow lanes. But what it doesn't yet have is vision. That's where you come in. You don't just build a mosque, you build the mosque. The Jingareber Mosque, to be exact. Thick with earth and wood, cooled by silence and centuries of prayer. It rises like a sandcastle hardened by history. You bring in an architect from Andalusia. Yes, Spain, because if you're going to make a statement, might as well be bold. The story goes you offered him gold equal to his weight. Either way, the man gets to work, and so does your legacy. And then, libraries. You start funding scholars. You gather manuscripts from Cairo, Mecca, Baghdad. You hire scribes to copy and translate texts into Arabic and local tongues. Astronomy, law, poetry, medicine. It all begins to flow into this once quiet corner. The townsfolk may still herd goats, yes, but now their children recite hadiths between feeding time. A camel driver quotes Aristotle at the watering hole. A spice merchant debates lunar eclipses over sweet tea. You are turning Timbuktu into a city of ink. And you don't stop there. You order the building of madrasas, Islamic schools that go far beyond just religious instruction. In time, this little outpost becomes a magnet for thinkers. Scholars travel from Morocco, Egypt, even distant Turkey. One day, it will house over 25,000 students. Imagine that. More than most European cities could dream of back then. Historians still argue how involved you personally were in every detail. Some say you directed construction and curriculum like a hands-on principal. Others claim you merely funded the dreams of others. But even skeptics agree. Without your gold, your vision, and your well-timed pilgrimage PR stunt, Timbuktu may never have bloomed the way it did. And in your quieter moments, when the desert wind licks the palm leaves and your joints ache from travel, you smile at what you're leaving behind. You're not just a king anymore. You're a gardener. And Timbuktu is your most fragile, most precious sprout. Of course, not everyone is thrilled. There are murmurs, jealous rivals in other towns, whispers about favoritism, about how much gold is too much gold for a library. Some accuse you of throwing coin at dreams instead of defense. There's even mild tension among some of your generals. Less glitter, more garrisons, they argue. But you know better. Fortresses crumble. Ideas don't. Besides, you've already built your military reputation. You've defended trade routes, punished bandits, and secured Mali's frontiers with careful diplomacy and, when needed, impressive shows of force. A little gold here, a little marriage alliance there. You know how the game is played. Still, you begin to feel the years pulling at your bones like the slow tug of river current. You return to Niani. You rest more often. You speak less, listen more. And one quiet night, beneath a moon that feels almost too full, you gather your advisors. The time has come to think about what happens after you. Because you've conquered the known world. Now it's time to conquer time itself. You wake slower these days. The palace in Niani is quieter now. The echo of feet on polished stone carries a little longer. The sunlight slants a little lower. You still rise early, but not with urgency. No council meeting awaits at dawn. No caravan trains to bless. No borders to worry over. You've done all that. And now, you turn your thoughts to the one thing no king escapes: succession. You look to your sons. Yes, plural. Like any monarch of your time, you've had multiple wives, and with them came many children. Some are scholars, others are warriors. A few are, well, less impressive. One in particular catches your eye: Mansa Musa. He's not the boldest of the bunch, not the cleverest, either. But he listens. He learns. He doesn't ask for more gold than needed. And most importantly, he understands your love of books. So you choose him. Of course, this doesn't sit well with everyone. A few of your more decorative sons grumble. One attempts a minor rebellion, a half-hearted affair involving drunk soldiers and a goat. It fizzles in a day. But it's a reminder that power, like fine silk, frays at the edges. You begin to train Magan more closely. You walk with him through the palace gardens, pointing out the vines that thrive in shade, the roses that wilt if overwatered. It's not just botany, it's policy. You send him to Timbuktu, not as a prince demanding tribute, but as a student. He sits among the scribes, listens to debates, copies verses of the Quran by hand. The people like him. Quiet competence has its own kind of magnetism. But succession isn't just about naming an heir. It's about securing the narrative. So, you start shaping the story. You gather court poets. You commission new histories. Some say you even have older records gently edited. Nothing egregious, of course, just smoothing out a few hiccups. That accidental fire in Wallata? Gone. That trade dispute with the Songhai? Reframed as a diplomatic triumph. Legacy management, you call it. Historians still debate how much of Mali's golden age was built on this quiet PR campaign. Was Mansa Musa the richest man in history? Maybe. But maybe it's also that you knew how to tell the story. You also began investing in symbols. You order coins minted, not just for trade, but for message. Your face, your name, stamped into copper and silver, circulating through thousands of hands. A traveling griot sings your lineage in a village you've never seen. A child in Gao can recite your pilgrimage route better than their own backyard. Your empire becomes a narrative loop, retold until it becomes truth. And then there's the calendar. Yes, the Islamic calendar dominates your realm, but you start keeping notes in your own quiet way. Moon cycles, harvests, eclipses, not to challenge religion, but to anchor memory, to remind those who come next that time belongs to the living as much as the divine. You hold one final festival, something enormous, ridiculous, dazzling. Dancers from Senegal, food from Africa, drummers whose rhythms can shake the clouds. It's part celebration, part declaration. You're not dead yet, but you're preparing the stage. And when Magan takes the throne, you do something most rulers would never dare. You don't vanish. You don't die in glory or vanish in a myth. You linger, quietly, behind the scenes. You let him make mistakes. You let him fix them. And one morning, as birds stir in the baobab trees and a servant offers you tea with too much sugar, you realize something. You're no longer the center of Mali. And that, somehow, is exactly the point. Because you've built something that can live without you. You wake to birdsong and the smell of millet porridge, but something's different. Outside, the usual palace bustle is hushed. Not solemn, just softer. You rise slowly, bones a little heavier these days. The embroidered robe slips over your shoulders, but the gold sash feels more symbolic than necessary. You're still Mansa Musa, but now mostly in name. Magan is king. He sits on the lion-carved throne you once filled. You're more of an echo now, an advisor with clout, a living legend that the scribes still whisper about. You don't mind. Mostly. But old habits don't die easily. You still wander the halls. You peek into council chambers, catch the drift of trade negotiations, listen to market reports. You nod, occasionally correct a number, but you resist giving orders. Magan needs to steer the ship. You're just the shadow of its builder. Still, the empire stretches. Your gold routes remain reliable. Salt keeps flowing north. The reputation you crafted, one of vast wealth, religious devotion, and generosity, is now Mali's main export. You start seeing strange visitors in the capital. A scholar from Persia, dusty from the journey, comes bearing mathematical questions. A trader from Genoa, wide-eyed at the sight of your domes and libraries, babbles about the African El Dorado. One scribe from Damascus insists on verifying whether you truly handed out gold, like sweet dates on your hatch. You just smile. Historians still argue whether these foreign accounts were accurate or inflated. Did gold truly lose value in Cairo because of you? Or was it later embellished by storytellers with a taste for gold-dusted drama? It doesn't matter. What matters is how they talk about Mali. You've turned a river kingdom into a continent-sized metaphor. The gold flows, yes, but so does the idea of prosperity. So does the myth. At home, you focus on something quieter, memory. You begin spending your afternoons in the shade of Timbuktu's towering mud-brick mosques, quietly reciting Quranic verses. You listen to scholars debate astronomy. You offer a correction here, a chuckle there. They still bow, but mostly out of habit now. You've become part of the institution. A few students don't even recognize you. One young boy, barefoot and covered in ink smudges, offers to sell you a scroll of your own pilgrimage story, complete with dramatic illustrations. You buy it for twice the asking price and never correct him. There's freedom in invisibility. Occasionally, you journey upriver, not in palanquins anymore, but by boat. Simple, slow, letting the current do most of the work. Villagers recognize your face, yes, but they don't kneel. They offer roasted yams and stories. Some say you rode a flying carpet on your hatch. Others swear your beard turned silver the day you touched Mecca's gates. One old woman insists you once wrestled a genie. You neither confirm nor deny. Instead, you listen. You let the legends pile up. You return in the Annie one day to find a foreign envoy waiting. Portuguese, perhaps, or Castilian. He bows too low, speaks too fast, dazzled by the gold leaf in your halls and the scent of frankincense. He's here for maps, and he offers maps of his own. You study them that evening. Strange coastlines, islands that look like sleeping lizards, mountain ranges that defy logic. But you don't laugh. You know that all empires are just guesses waiting to be corrected. In fact, you've made a few guesses yourself. You started funding a quiet project, a shipyard, far west of the Niger, near the coast. You've heard tales of land beyond the Atlantic, far land, mysterious. You wonder, not for conquest, but for curiosity. Historians still debate whether you, or your brother before you, launched an expedition westward. Some say hundreds of ships disappeared. Others call it myth. But there's a particular boat you remember sketching, sails curved like a cow's horn, meant for deeper waters. You never see it return, but the thought lingers. And as the sun sets over your quiet kingdom, gold-tinted and slow, you finally feel it. Legacy is not just what people remember. It's what they wonder about. The days begin to blend. The vibrant markets, once thrilling to you, now feel like background music. You sit often beneath a baobab tree near the palace, listening to wind chimes made of flattened gold coins, gifts from past traders who insisted on offering tokens of gratitude. They tinkle lazily in the breeze, like distant laughter. You sip from a calabash of sweetened tamarind water, eyes half closed, letting the world move around you. You are older now, not frail, but slower. Your knees protest stairs. Your appetite prefers dates to feasts. Your voice, once booming enough to still a crowd, is softer, more suited to poetry than proclamation. You've begun reflecting on your younger self, the boy who dreamed in gold, the pilgrim who made the desert shimmer, the emperor who painted Mali's name across maps drawn by strangers thousands of miles away. Was it too much? You sometimes wonder if your gold-gifting pilgrimage helped or hindered. Cairo's inflation, the legends, the envy, it had ripple effects. Historians still debate whether your lavishness inspired awe or destabilized economies. Did you do it for God or for glory? You smile at the thought. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe it was just your way of sharing what the earth gave you. Magan visits often now. He seeks your advice without asking for it directly. You notice how he hesitates before signing treaties, how he imitates your thoughtful silences. You offer riddles instead of orders. Let him find his own way. You always gave too much, he says once, half joking. Too much gold. Too much praise. Too many books. You just nod. That's the point. Your wealth was never meant to be hoarded. You believed in the gravity of generosity, how it pulls people and reshapes them, makes them orbit something larger than themselves. It wasn't just gold you gave away. You gave away ideas. You funded schools, encouraged translations of classical texts, built libraries that echoed with the scratch of reed pens and the drone of recitation. Scholars came not for riches, but for the chance to think freely. And Mali became more than a kingdom. It became a classroom. You revisit the university one quiet morning. The courtyard is full of sandals. Students recite hadith beneath the acacia trees. A professor lectures on the movement of stars, drawing invisible lines through the sky with his hand. You sit at the edge, unannounced. A boy offers you a seat. You accept it. And for a moment, you're not an emperor. You're just a man curious about the world. The desert itself seems quieter these days. The caravans move at their ancient rhythm, bells clinking, camels swaying like ships on the dunes. The routes you secured, those winding, golden arteries, still pulse with goods and gossip. You overhear traders speaking of distant wars, of ports in India, of spices that smell like dreams. One man claims to have seen a strange bird in the forest beyond the coast, bright blue, feathered like flame. Another describes a city of mirrors where people live underground. The stories are wild. You believe them all. Because why not? Mali, too, once sounded impossible. Your nights become more meditative. You sit with old maps and older memories. You finger a strip of worn parchment, the original plan for the Jingarubber Mosque. The corners are smudged from years of handling. You remember the laborers, their songs, the way the walls rose like a sandcastle that wouldn't crumble. You think about the stories told in your name, the ones that will linger. They'll say you built a city from faith and flower, that your palace had walls of gold, your elephants wore silk, and your beard glittered under moonlight, that you fed entire villages with a glance. They'll be wrong, of course, but not completely, because you did leave footprints so large they'll be mistaken for myth. You did toss gold like it was grain. You did make kings feel like merchants in your shadow. You smile, half in amusement, half in sleepiness, and you let the past hum softly around you. The dreams are getting longer. You lie beneath your woven canopy, the scent of incense curling through the thick night air. Somewhere outside, a flute is playing a slow, meandering tune. You close your eyes and let it wrap around your thoughts like silk. You dream of deserts blooming, of scrolls that whisper, of a city on a hill, made entirely of words. When you wake, your first thought is not gold. It's memory. Your scribe, old now and nearly blind, reads aloud from the chronicles he's spent decades compiling. The words are careful, deliberate. They capture your travels, your decrees, your eccentricities. Some entries make you laugh. Apparently, one foreign envoy once claimed you own a giraffe that could speak 5 languages. You don't correct him. What's the harm in a little mythology? But you also catch what's missing. The loneliness, the compromises, the small failures buried under ceremonial fanfare, the people you disappointed, the mistakes that can't be unmade. Your reign was gilded, yes, but not without its cracks. Historians still argue whether your wealth was truly endless or merely well-managed illusion. Some whisper that you borrowed gold near the end. That debts were paid in silence. You never confirm or deny it. Instead, you focus on what you can pass on. You summon cartographers and scholars from across the empire. Map everything, you tell them, even what you don't understand. They fan out, down the Niger, into the forest kingdoms, across the Sahara. You want Mali to be known, not just for its gold, but for its ideas, its people, its pulse. One day, a scholar from Timbuktu approaches you with a story, fragments of a tale from beyond the ocean. He speaks of a Malian fleet, led by your predecessor, Abubakari II, who vanished westward in search of lands no one had ever seen. You lean forward. The story is vague, full of holes, but it fills you with a familiar restlessness. What if it's true? What if there are islands beyond the horizon where Malian sails once fluttered? You commission a mural to be painted in the university's central hall, a ship, glowing with lanterns, sailing into the red sun. Beneath it, a simple inscription. To seek is to remember. You often walk past that image, and each time, it reminds you that Mali was never meant to be a closed box of treasure. It was a compass. Your health dips quietly. You begin coughing more often. The court physicians bring crushed herbs, honeyed mixtures, amulets braided with bark and prayer. You thank them, but you know the truth. The body has its own rhythms. You start giving things away. Not grandly, not like Cairo. Quietly, with meaning. Your books go to students. Your robes to orphans. Your gold? You leave it mostly untouched. Let Magan figure that out. Instead, you give stories. You summon children to your bedside and tell them tales of deserts that move like waves, of stars that blink like gods. You speak gently, your voice sanded down by time. Remember, you tell one boy, wealth disappears. Words echo. He frowns. But isn't gold louder? You chuckle. Only if you drop it from a rooftop. Your court prepares for a transition. Scribes update titles. Envoys arrive with nervous gifts. The empire braces for change. You remain calm. You've seen worse storms. Dust storms that turn noon into dusk. Betrayals that stung more than sand in an open wound. Magan stands at your side. He asks less now, speaks more. You nod. That's good. A ruler must listen first. But eventually, they must command. On your last trip outside, you visit the mosque. You take your time. Every carved panel, every faded verse, every crack in the mud brick walls feels holy. You press your palm to the cool surface and feel the heartbeat of Mali itself. And for the first time in a long while, you feel entirely at peace. Not because you've done everything right, but because you tried. Night falls sooner now. You move slower through the palace, footsteps echoing against the stone. Servants tiptoe. Musicians play softer, as if trying not to wake something fragile. You feel a strange sensation in your chest. Not pain exactly, but a quietness. A hush, where once there had been gold and fire. Magan is crowned soon. He's nervous. You can see it in the way his hands fidget, in the way he double-checks every robe, every scroll, every word he's about to say. You don't tease him. Instead, you take him aside, late one evening, and sit beside him under a mango tree, fireflies pulsing like thoughts. You tell him 3 things. 1. Never believe you are the smartest person in the room. That means you've stopped learning. 2. Don't fear being forgotten. Fear being remembered for the wrong reasons. 3. Trust the people who bring you bad news gently. They care more than the ones who flatter you. He nods. You know he won't remember all of it. But maybe, one night, years from now, he'll be under his own mango tree, and the words will come back. Your final weeks are strange, slow. The gold sits, untouched. The city hums without you. Markets bustle. Students argue in dusty courtyards. Griots rehearse your story already. You overhear one practicing. Mansa Musa, the king who bent the desert. The one who turned dust into gold, and gold into legend. You wince. Not because it's wrong, but because it's so clean. History rarely is. Historians still argue whether your reign expanded too fast, whether your pilgrimage was noble devotion or a political stunt. Some think the gold was exaggerated. Some say the stories grew because people wanted them to grow. A kind of wishful economics. You don't argue with that, either. After all, what is legend if not a shared illusion? Your physicians begin speaking to you like a sunset, slowly, gently, full of awe. They say you may not have many days left. You thank them, then dismiss them. You've always preferred the sound of silence to well-meaning euphemisms. Your thoughts drift more often now. To Sundiata, the first Lion King of Mali. To the Songhai, waiting like a shadow in the east. To the river that never stops, no matter who wears the crown. You wonder what Mali will become, whether the maps will change, whether your story will be told with laughter, awe, or revision. You dictate one last letter, not to a king or sultan, but to the scholars of Timbuktu. It's short. You are the future now, not the gold, not the throne, not the road I took to Mecca. Keep the questions alive. Let them outlive the answers. You seal it with wax. A simple crescent moon, nothing more. The morning you no longer rise. The palace is oddly quiet. No horns. No grand proclamations. Magan does not weep publicly. He just touches the throne gently, like it might still be warm. Across Mali, word spread slowly. In the markets, some barely pause. In the universities, classes are stopped for the day. In the mosques, prayers are whispered longer, softer. And in a house somewhere near the desert, a boy asks his grandmother if the stories are true. Did Mansa Musa really give away so much gold the world got dizzy? She smiles and says nothing, because sometimes silence is the best kind of answer. You're gone now, but the dust hasn't settled. Mali lives on, and so does your name, though already it begins to drift into story more than memory. People start telling it with a little more glitter than you remember. The road gets brighter. The camels get taller. The gold piles get higher. You listen, if only from beyond, and smile at the exaggeration. But Mali is changing. Magan, your son, is king. He tries. Really, he does. You would have been proud of the way he speaks softly but firmly in court. The way he walks through the palace gardens at dawn, like you used to. But ruling after a legend, that's not easy. Imagine being the calm breeze that follows a thunderstorm. People expected another Mansa Musa. Instead, they got a thoughtful, bookish boy who liked astronomy more than accounting. He inherited the gold, but not the grip. The economy, still bloated with your legendary generosity, begins to wobble. Markets once swollen with currency now feel strained. Historians still argue whether it was entirely your fault, whether too much gold permanently unbalanced the region. Some say the long-term effects were manageable. Others claim it sparked instability that would ripple for decades. Meanwhile, the empire begins to loosen. Tributary kings are their borders. Merchants negotiate harder. The Songhai to the east, once respectful junior partners in your time, begin to stir with ambition. You had warned Magan about them. Once, after a tense envoy meeting where the Songhai diplomat smiled too much. Beware the ones who smile like chess players, you'd said. He'd laughed. Now, he wishes he'd listened. Timbuktu remains your brightest legacy. The university thrives. Manuscripts continue to flow like the Niger itself. Scholars in narrow robes argue over obscure lines of astronomy, over philosophical footnotes in the Quran. The smell of parchment and ink still fills the air. One young girl, barely 12, becomes famous for reciting 3 volumes of legal poetry by heart. They call her the Moon of Mali. Her fame spreads as far as Egypt. She says she wants to be a historian. She writes her name once at the top of the page. Mansa Musa, the pilgrim who changed the sky. You like that one? Elsewhere, griots adapt your story to suit new listeners. One version turns your pilgrimage into a tale of gods and gold. Another says you never return at all, that you walked into the Red Sea and ascended into light. You wonder which will stick. Perhaps it doesn't matter, because Mali continues for now. The palaces stand. The market sellers still shout. The musicians still play slow rhythms on balafons under baobab trees. Life hums on. Not as loudly, not as brightly, but steadily. Your legacy is now a weather pattern. Not a storm, but a season. Some say the gold has vanished into legend. Others believe there are still hidden stashes, buried under sand, sealed in clay jars, waiting for the right wind. No one has found them. Yet. And Magan, he rules gently. He ages quickly. He never travels far from the capital. Some say he feared he'd be compared to you two directly. Some say he simply liked the quiet. Late in his life, he builds a small mosque near the Niger. Nothing grand. No calligraphic flourishes. Just a square space, open to the wind. On the doorframe, he inscribes a single line. Gold fades. Questions remain. Maybe that's what you wanted all along. You've been gone a long time now. The city still remembers you, though only in fragments. Children hear your name and picture a man made entirely of gold. Traders recall stories of your caravans stretching from horizon to horizon, though the details get fuzzier each time. Historians piece together your reign from manuscripts half-eaten by termites and second-hand accounts scribbled on the backs of maps. But your spirit hovers, doesn't it? There's a courtyard in Gao where an old man tells bedtime stories. Each evening, as the sun slides behind the acacia trees, the children gather. He doesn't always tell the same one. Sometimes it's about spirits in wells or talking hyenas. But once in a while, when the air is still and the stars begin to blink awake, he tells your story. Only in his version, you ride a lion. Your beard is woven from silver threads, and your robe sparkles with constellations. You toss coins into the sky, and they come back as stars. You walk all the way to Mecca on sand that turns to silk under your feet. Historically accurate? Not even close. But magical? Utterly. In a way, this is what you've become. Part history, part lullaby. A figure too large for one scroll, one court, or even one empire. You're stitched into the fabric of West African memory, shimmering between reality and myth. And the empire you ruled? It doesn't last forever. The Songhai, once vassals under your command, rise. They become the new power on the savannah. Under leaders like Sunni Ali and Askia Muhammad, they sweep across the Niger Valley, eventually taking Timbuktu and Jen. The heart of your empire beats under new rule. New dynasties, new rhythms. But they build on what you left. They use your roads, trade routes, and even some of your laws. The universities still hum with learning. The manuscripts continue to flow. In this way, your hand still guides the pen. Your voice still murmurs in prayer halls. Historians still argue over your titles. Were you truly the richest man who ever lived? Some economists try to adjust for inflation. Others suggest that no sum can capture your impact. Rich, after all, isn't always about numbers. It's about reach, memory, influence. You left gold, yes, but you also left architecture, law, learning, and myth. You left meaning. And centuries later, your legend finds new ears. In modern-day Mali, schoolchildren learn your name alongside world leaders. African-American historians rediscover your reign, celebrating it as a counter-narrative to centuries of erasure. You become a symbol of African greatness, of Islamic scholarship, of historical wonder. Even in pop culture, your image returns, on murals, in rap lyrics, in animated shorts. A golden king striding through history like a whispered secret. Not bad for a man who once got lost in Cairo looking for a spice market. Some say you never meant to be famous. You just wanted to do right by your people, to worship sincerely, to leave behind something better than what you found. If so, mission accomplished. And even if the real you lies buried somewhere beneath layers of sand and fable, that's all right. Legends make good pillows. The wind rises softly over the dunes now, like breath slipping through an open window. You are older, slower, not quite bent, but no longer springing upstairs two at a time. Your robe is a little heavier with embroidery, your beard more white than black. But your mind is still sharp, and your empire still breathes. You return to Niani, your capital, after years of travel, glory, and overgenerosity. The city feels both familiar and strange, as if it's grown without your permission. New mosques stand where markets once bustled. You pass through gates you don't remember commissioning. The people bow lower than before, but there's a nervousness now, too. Gold has a way of making people polite and anxious. You settle into your court like a man sinking into a bath, cautiously, waiting for the temperature to surprise him. The courtiers surround you with flattery and fresh figs. Your scribes bombard you with records, tax receipts, building permits, lists of new scholars arriving in Timbuktu. You nod, smile, but feel that ache behind your ribs, the one that tells you time is slipping. You start to write more. Decrees, mostly. Small laws to make life smoother. Adjustments to weights and measures. Rules about merchants who lie too much about salt purity. One scroll is dedicated entirely to camel speed limits near the palace, though you suspect no one will enforce it. And always, you check on your schools. The ones you help fund in Gao and Timbuktu and Jen. You insist on updates, letters from the scholars, copies of the poems. And whenever a student writes something especially clever, you reward them, not with gold, but with a note in your own handwriting. Well said, you scribble. You made me smile. That's your real wealth now. Not the ingots, or the jewelry, or the camel trains stretching past the horizon. No, your treasure is words. Ideas. The ripple of knowledge across centuries. But you're tired. And when the time comes, you don't make a fuss. You slip into the next world as quietly as you once slipped out of Niani on your pilgrimage. A hush falls over the empire. The scribes go silent. The gold is stored away. And in the marketplaces, people whisper your name like it might still change the weather. Mansa Musa, the emperor who made gold feel too light. The king whose pilgrimage warped the economy. The builder of mosques, patron of scholars, generous to a fault, remembered like a half-finished prayer. The desert takes your footprints. The rain smooths your legacy. But somewhere, a child still sits under a baobab tree and listens to the story. Of you. Of the road to Mecca. Of the city made of books. Of the day the sun caught your robe just right and made the world blink. And now it's time to rest. Wind down, 300 words. The desert cools at night, Mansa. The wind slows. The camels kneel quietly beside the embers of a fading fire. Above you, stars scatter like grains of salt across black velvet sky. Soft, shimmering, unbothered. Your gold is gone, spent long ago, traded for stories and stone and sanctuary. But your name lingers, not as noise, but as lullaby. Your empire, like all empires, changed, fractured, melted back into the sands. Yet your vision outlived it. A vision of faith, of knowledge, of connection across continents. A vision stitched into scrolls, whispered in prayers, carved into mud brick walls that still stand, even if a little cracked with time. So sleep now. Sleep like the scribe who's written the last line of a perfect manuscript. Sleep like the merchant who's counted every coin, every date, every grain of salt. Sleep like the camel who's walked from Cairo to Niani and back, and finally laid down its burden. Let your robes rustle one last time in the breeze. Let the songs of your court fade into silence. Let the memory of gold turn soft and warm, like the edge of a candle's light. You've done enough, more than enough. And somewhere, someone is still listening, still dreaming, still hearing your name in the hush between breaths. Sweet dreams, traveler.